but they're right front and center. And they all have to do, the first group of them have to do with what would have to do with the question of who is a human being? Who is a human being? If every human being is made in the image and likeness of God, and we are to treat them with that reverence, and respect for God's creatures, then it's pretty important that we can say who's a human being, because I don't treat a human being the same as I treat a frog, for example, or a fly. But a human being is special. The steward of creation and all this. And God, as I said, remember that point? I said, God did not make it so that my happiness can be attained at the expense of your happiness. If what I need to be, what I think would make me happy depends on me squelching your happiness, then that's not what God wants. Because He wants mutual happiness from us. See? So, for example, in these questions of what we call bioethical questions, that's what is at the base of most of our injustice today. To my mind, the most radical injustice has to do with these questions. Let's consider the whole question of abortion, for example, which is the front and center, the biggest injustice that I'm aware of. Think of this, think of yourself, you try to just imagine yourself when you were in the womb of your mother, there in this perfectly happy environment where you had all your needs met, you were perfectly contented, and you had this, unknowns to you, you had this huge big future in another world about to come forth. Well, the psalmist looks back on this time in the womb, we could say, in Psalm 139, and he says, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am wondrously made. Wonderful are your works. You know me right well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Okay. So the psalmist says that right from within the womb, God recognizes us as in His image and likeness. And He knows us through and through. So that if when we ask the question, who is human, is the life in the womb human or not? That's the first question. If we can't answer that question, then I think everything else is going to be awry. Because if it is right, if it is just for me to take the life in the womb, then why can't I take life outside the womb? Why can't I take, for example, if it's possible for me, and what we have right now, of course, in our country, and have had for over 30 years, is that I can, if I'm a woman or a man, or a woman especially, I can take the life in the womb and not have to give any public reason for it. I don't have to give any justification. Now, if you're driving your car and you hit somebody out here on the street and you kill him, and you drive away, what do we call that? Huh? What do you call that? Hit and run, right? What happens if I do that? If I hit somebody on the street and kill them and drive away, what happens as a result? I get arrested. What are they going to ask me? Huh? What happened? Right? What happened here? Listen, here you were driving. There's a car wreck, crash. Somebody saw you, and there's a dead person here. In other words, I have to give an explanation of why this person is dead because of what I did, whether I like it or not. That's what we call justice. That's what justice demands. But if a woman decides to go to a clinic and get an abortion, she doesn't have to tell a soul why she's doing it. Is that just? This is a human being in the womb. a life. And you don't even give a reason to take that life. See? Now, this is profoundly unjust. Profoundly unjust. And if this is the basis of our social life, then we are in big trouble, because what happens at the end of life? What happens when I get sick? I mean, you could be your age, or I could be 80 years old, and I'm suffering. Why don't I just, what if I ask, I just want to take my own life? Or I want you to help me. I want you to help me to kill myself. That's what you can do in Oregon, We can do that here in Oregon. I can ask, and the law will enforce it, that I can ask somebody to help me to kill myself. This is to take what is not mine to take, because that's God's gift. And this is another form of injustice. That's not just a matter of an individual, but it's a matter of a society that works things this way. Now, let's think of the way this might connect with other long-standing injustices, just to take, well, not just to take our society, but we'll take it for starters here in America. If you, right off the top of your head, if you had to think of American history, and you wanted to say, what is the greatest injustice in American history, what do you think you'd say? Slavery. In connection with that I would agree. What's a kind of a more general term for that? Because slavery ended in 1865, right? Was that the end of the problem? What's the deeper problem that goes? Well, there's another word too, discrimination. What kind of discrimination? Racial discrimination, huh? Or a word, you're right, all these is right, but if just for shorthand, racism, could we say? Huh? If this is from the dawn of the United States, from the writing of the Constitution, this has always been a great source of shame for people that took seriously the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. Huh? This is, of course, all men are created equal is right out of the Scriptures, isn't it? The image of God. All men are created equal except those that are treated as slaves, are treated as subhuman. Now, this has been a scandal, and it is only in the last 50 years when we've really come to eliminate that, I think, at least officially. Huh? Now, so we could think of the segregation in the South, when blacks had to go to they couldn't eat in places, they couldn't go to theaters, they couldn't go to restrooms. It was all, and you had to get out of the way if a white man walked down the street. All this kind of just terrible, terrible discrimination and indignity, huh? Treating these people as beneath contempt. There's with black Americans. What about with Mexican Americans? Well, back, I remember reading about in the 50s, I think it was in the 40s, go down to Ciudad Juarez, right there at the border, and hire Mexican laborers and put them in the back of a truck, like cattle, standing up, and close the back door, and they'd stand up and drive them all the way to Minnesota. And maybe, I guess, maybe give them some water or something along the way, but they were treated like slaves for all practical purposes, So there's, when I was, my parents came, my grandparents, or my forefathers came from Ireland in the mid-1800s, in the 1840s to Michigan. And the Irish at that time were the poorest people in the world, at least the poorest in Europe by far. Absolutely just devastatingly poor, pathetic. And they were uneducated and ignorant and desperate. Well, they came to the United States in great numbers, and they were just considered worse than vermin. Huh? Irish, there's a famous sign, Irish need not apply for employment because we don't want you. They were beneath contempt. Huh? So this is this kind of thing of singling out a certain group of people for one reason or another. Well, let's take the most dramatic example of our time. What about the Jews in Germany? The Jews in Nazi Germany. If you're Jewish, if you have Jewish blood, you have to wear this. First it started with the yellow star of David, right? You have to wear that publicly. Then they started to lose their businesses and so on. And finally, what happened?